Hey, I just got my Analogue Pocket about 2 weeks ago, and I just felt like making a short first impressions and experience video. The Analogue Pocket, in case you didn't know, you just stumbled upon this video, is like a luxury electronic that plays all of your Game Boy games out of the box. And it does also work with some other handheld systems, retro systems like Game Gear and stuff. It's basically a really fancy Game Boy. The whole device runs off of FPGA cores, which I'm not really familiar exactly how that tech works, but it lets you run those original games pretty much flawlessly. So the reason I want to make this video was because of the absolute inundation of videos that praise the Pocket, and it kind of got me interested in the system too. Everyone online, on YouTube especially, was just like, wow, this is the best Game Boy basically ever. If you're a game collector, like, this is the thing to have. It's really great, like the screen is the best thing ever. And I dropped the money on it. This is a really expensive thing. I always think that when it comes to tech and reviews and stuff, when it comes to the money aspect, it is a luxury item. It's for people who love collecting, playing retro handhelds, retro like Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance even. And really you can only decide for yourself if the price is good for you, in my opinion. I was comfortable with the price. I was willing to pay for the machine, and it's really up to you for that. You just got to take what people say, I guess, at face value. But I always feel like no tech is ever exactly what I want. It's a very common problem I have with like phones and that sort of thing. And the Analogue Pocket has its pros and cons. So right off the bat, the build of it is very solid feeling. It's got a good weight to it. It feels like a original Game Boy in size with the same weight as if it had like 4 batteries in it. The screen and speakers are fantastic. They're beautiful, the colors are vivid, it gets really bright and really loud if you want it to be, and this audio quality is fantastic. Sounds really good. Let's put the volume up. That gets quite loud. I can't read. The compatibility of the device is awesome. All of my games worked perfectly and looked better than ever. The screen options are really cool as well. And also the modding community is great with lots of emulation options that I wasn't really aware of. But you can set all of that up in literally minutes. Having save states on my original Game Boy games is really cool. That's probably one of the best features of the system. I've been playing Fire Emblem, and being able to if I feel like I'm making a risky decision, just load up a save state like a modern emulator, but with my original cartridge is really cool. And you can also use sleep features, which makes games like Fire Emblem even better. But then there are some cons. So, as good as the build quality feels, I did notice some small irregularities with my Pocket. I think that YouTubers online seem to have a bit of a worry that if they talk about it poorly, that maybe they would get in trouble with Analogue, and maybe they won't send them any new stuff. I'm not really sure, it's just what I'm thinking. But in my experience, the buttons, subjectively speaking, are a little bit on the stiff side. They aren't hard to press, but they're a little heavy feeling compared to something like an original Game Boy Advance. For me, the perfect button feel on a handheld, at least recently, would be something on like a Switch Lite. I find the Switch Lite buttons are almost like the perfect amount of give that I'm a little picky about. I and many people online seem to have an issue with double presses on the A button. Most of my time in the last 2 weeks has been spent playing Fire Emblem on Game Boy Advance, and sometimes the menus will double press on the A. I'm not sure if that's just how I personally use handheld game devices, because I do feel like I press things somewhat lightly, and that might lead to the occasional double tap. I've personally had issues with the right D-pad as well, being a little harder to make contact with. I have to push a little harder on right than I do on left, up, or down. But these things I have adjusted to in my short time with the device, But as someone, like I said, who is a little light on their controllers, I had a bit of a getting used to period. Using emulators on the Pocket has its own set of problems. You can't run save states or use the sleep function when you're running emulators. And if you're emulating Game Boy games, you can't use any of those screen filters that make the Pocket look so good. One other thing that I've noticed just recently is I think there may or may not be a dead pixel on my screen. It is so faint to see. It's almost like the tiniest grain of dust, but you know, it's something like that when you're spending so much money on these things, you do expect a bit better. I haven't gotten through with support yet, but maybe I'll leave a comment if anything productive happens. But despite all the things I just said, I still do think that the quality of the Analogue Pocket is enough to justify picking it up for some people. So overall, I think the Analogue Pocket is still one of the best ways to play your original Game Boy collection, but at a very steep price. If you haven't already invested in a really large Game Boy collection, I personally wouldn't recommend it. I think that if you are dedicated to playing a lot of Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games, then it's probably the best, but I have heard of some problems with things like Game Gear. Not with the emulation, but with the physical adapter getting in the way. And it's a tough sell for a lot of people who maybe want to casually play Game Boy Advance games again, when services like Nintendo Switch Online are not even a tenth of the price and you can play most of the best Game Boy games already. Obviously you can't play low-key hidden gems, but in the same vein, like, would you be playing those anyway? At the end of the day, I really just wanted to make this video to help people manage their own FOMO. I feel like that's a really big aspect of Analogue's business model, unfortunately. The shop is very limited in production, and it feels like, while it's not necessarily their fault, it leads to a lot of people online feeling like they have this massive fear of missing out. And that's the big part of their success. For the same price, your options are really wide for playing Game Boy Advance games. Like I said, there's Switch Online, but you could also go in the aftermarket and find a relatively good quality Game Boy and play all of those games and get the original Game Boy systems for not even half the price of the Analogue Pocket. Anyways, I hope this helped. If you have a little bit of FOMO when it comes to the Pocket, or if you're looking to buy one yourself, I hope you decide on what's best for yourself. Like I said, it is probably the best way to play these games, but is it the only way? No. What are your thoughts on the Pocket? Do you have one? How's your experience been with it? Like I said, I've enjoyed it, but it does come with its faults. No piece of tech is perfect. Anyways, thanks for watching.